Hi, everyone. You're listening to The Future of Food Is You, a production of the Cherry Bomb Podcast Network. I'm your host, Abena Anim-Somuah, and each week I talk to emerging talents in the food world, and they share what they're up to, as well as their dreams and predictions for what's ahead. I love this new generation of chefs, bakers, and creatives making their way in the worlds of food, drink, media, and tech. We have a special episode this week coming to you from Mexico City. I've been spending a lot of time in this bustling city and getting familiar with the local food scene. Today's guest is Lorea Olavarri. Lorea is the chef, owner, and partner of 3 restaurants across Mexico City: Nero, a pasta bar; Eatery, a French-style bistro; and Margot, a daytime rooftop eatery offering classical French dishes. Lorea chats about her life in fashion before transitioning to the hospitality industry, how she opened 3 restaurants by the age of 27, and how she hopes to gain more professional experience by staging at some dream restaurants. Stay tuned for our chat. Thank you to Kerry for supporting The Future of Food Is You. Kerry is the iconic Irish brand famous for its beautiful cheese made with milk from Irish grass-fed cows. It's winter here in New York, and lots of other places, as you know, and I love to brighten the season with my favorite Kerry cheeses. Kerry Cashel Blue Farmhouse cheese has become a staple in my salads. The creamy, delicious texture has that distinct blue cheese bite and is the star of my kale and walnut salads. Soup season is also in full swing. Kerry has some great recipes on their site, and one I have in frequent rotation is roasted broccoli soup with Kerry Dubliner with Irish stout cheese. The sweet and nutty flavor and caramel notes take it to the next level. And then the sandwich of the season, of course, is grilled cheese. Upgrade yours with a Kerry Reserve Cheddar, which is sharp, strong, rich, and smooth. For us snackers out there, a personal cheese plate always hits the spot. Kerry Skellig, a rich and tangy sweet cheese, pairs perfectly with tart apple slices, your favorite crackers, or a pickle or two. Look for Kerry cheese at your favorite supermarket, specialty grocery store, or cheese shop. Visit kerrygoldusa.com for recipes, product information, and a store locator. This episode of The Future of Food Is You is brought to you by Oishi. Oishi is the company behind the world's largest indoor vertical strawberry farm, and their mission is to raise the standard of fresh fruit in America. Oishi berries are grown without pesticides and are perfectly ripe, fresh, and always in season. So, how did the brand come to be? In 2016, Oishi's founders Hiroki Koga and Brendan Somerville brought seedlings of an omakase berry from the Japanese Alps to Jersey City. Now, their indoor vertical farms replicate a perfect day in Japan, complete with warm light, mild heat, and buzzing bees. Recently, one of our producers, Londyn Crenshaw, was invited to a dinner to experience each of Oishi's berry varieties. She found the 2 strawberry varieties, omakase and koyo, to be very distinct from each other. She thought the koyo berry was tart and complex with a firm texture, while the omakase was creamy with a delicate sweetness. Think quintessential strawberry flavor. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm definitely going to be checking out my local Whole Foods for Oishi berries so I can start adding them to my granola bowls in the morning. If you want to learn more about Oishi or see where you can find them near you, check out oishi.com. Now, let's check in with today's guest. Lorea, thank you so much for joining us on The Future of Food Is You.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here with you.
Can you tell us where you grew up and how did food show up in your life?
I was born and raised in Mexico City. Basically been here all my life, but was very lucky to go abroad with my family for some years. We had the opportunity to go to France, and then we also went to San Diego for 2 years. So I think that was a very big part of me because it opened my eyes to the whole world, leaving Mexico for a little while. And I think food showed up in my life very naturally. Since I can remember, inside my house, since 8 a.m., we're talking about food. And my kitchen is always smelling like we're cooking something, the smells in the kitchen. I remember since I'm little, were always there, very present. Also, I have a lot of influences from my grandparents, my parents. I never thought food was such a big thing in my life since now that I'm a restaurateur, because when I was little, I saw it as a very natural thing. Talk about food all the time. Like in Mexico, Mexican culture is a lot about when you see someone, it's either to have lunch or breakfast or dinner or to celebrate something. But in the end, food is always the main character of the event. It's the more important part of the event. When we were little, we used to go to my grandparents' ranch, which is like an hour away from Mexico, more like on the countryside. I remember we went there and 5 a.m. in the morning, we were milking the cows with my cousins. We learned how to kill bunnies, even though it sounds very sad.
Rabbit's good.
Rabbits, I love rabbit. For me, it's so normal eating it since we've been eating it since I can remember.
Yeah.
But we also, I remember killing the sheep, learning how to, clean the intestines, everything. So I think that part, going to the garden to grab the vegetables, I saw it as very normal. But then we started going so much because we started studying. We couldn't go as much. The city absorbed us. And it stopped being such an important part of me. And today that I realized that, it was what made me be so in contact with the raw part of food since a very young age.
Is there a particular dish that's an Olavarri family special?
Well, I could name so much, but to name a few that were constant and a common at my house, more Mexican dishes, chile rellenos. My mom just loves them, so sometimes we tell her, just stop making that dish so much. Also, chicken fried tacos. It's flautas. Also, something called budín indio, which is that was very from my house because you don't see it out there so much. Típicas albóndigas, also with rice, very typical of Mexico.
Yeah, what are albóndigas for our guests who aren't?
It's meatballs.
Yes.
Yeah. Molletes for breakfast, chilaquiles, and we also have a lot of influence from my grandparents that weren't Mexicans. I'm the third generation here in Mexico, but we have a lot of French and Spanish influences. So tortilla de papa, spinach souffle was a very constant in my house. So yeah, recipes from all around, but mostly Mexican, of course, since we grew up here. And a lot of European, Spanish, and French cuisine were very present in my life.
Before your life in food, you went to school for fashion and you had a small jewelry business. What was it like, going to fashion school and then eventually starting a jewelry line?
So yeah, I decided to study fashion. It's a funny thing about it today, but it never crossed my mind that I could actually work on food. I never thought about it since it was something so daily that it was something normal. So I was what am I going to study? And I love fashion, still do. So I go study fashion. Yeah, I studied here in Mexico at Centro, and I loved it. It was 4 years of a lot of learning. And I think it helped me so much for what I do today, the creative part and the concept is the building of fashion has helped me so much to build what I do today. And so I started a jewelry brand 2 years before graduating. It helped me so much because it was the first time learning anything to do with work. So it was from building a brand, knowing what the DNA of the brand was going to be, going to the historic center in Mexico to go look for materials, finding jewelers that would be willing to work in low quantity, small batches, packaging, who was going to make my packaging, but they always tell you can do 1,000 with me. No, I needed 100 because it was fine jewelry. So yeah, it was interesting. It was my first time doing anything. The web page, online selling, how to communicate to the client, how to gain their, how do you say confianza?
Confidence.
Their confidence, how they could
Their
trust,
yeah.
Your product was what you were selling to them. So yeah, it was a great experience because it was my first time knowing and learning about anything that had to do with work. Also, first time working with people, first time employing someone, how to be a boss for the first time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I learned a lot from that brand.
And you end up graduating during the pandemic, which obviously is incredibly tricky. But it seems like you slowly transitioned out of fashion into food and you developed this hobby for making pasta. I'm really curious, what was the fixation around pasta and why, and how did you enjoy learning more about it during this time?
So I graduated middle of the pandemic, and everyone, I had so much time on my hands, and I loved cooking. So pasta, I had made pasta before, and every time I made pasta, the whole process of getting the flour out and making the pasta, it was so relaxing. So I started making so much pasta in the pandemic and got fixated on it, and I was like, I'm going to become an expert on doing this. I love pasta so much, and everyone loves pasta so much. So I was like, my family is not going to bother eating pasta every day, so let's do it. So I started first going on YouTube to like see the multiple recipes. There's so many ways to make pasta. So I started watching so much videos like Italian nonnas making pasta.
Yeah, like pasta grannies and
exactly.
Yeah.
Of course, I got the book after of pasta grannies. Such
Yeah.
an inspiration. And it's so tough, that book, because you look at the pasta grannies and they make it look so easy, no? And then you try and you're like, what?
Yeah, well, they have it in their hearts, you know. Yeah,
Their hearts, and you see their arms, they're so strong.
they've got the muscle memory
like
too.
it's in their DNA making pasta.
Yeah.
So I started making so much recipes and learning so much and start doing my own conclusions and my own recipes. And since I started making so many pasta, we had to eat them with a sauce. So the sauces came very naturally. I started making sauces. Also got inspiration from a lot of books to make the sauces. But I think that part was easier since I had cooked so much, like in my house. So I was like, I'm going to make an amatriciana, but we're going to make it like our house way.
The Olavarri special.
Exactly. The classic amatriciana, but I know my family's going to like it this way. Like they came very naturally, the salsas. So yeah, that's how I became obsessed with pasta.
Yeah. And it sounds like, you know, at some point your family got sick of the pasta and eventually you wanted to start making it for other people. What was the reception when you started, you know, giving pasta to friends or neighbors?
See, I started to give it like to my aunts, to my friends, very close friends. And they started like spreading the word that I was making fresh pasta. And in the pandemic, like everyone, I think, didn't want to cook anymore. So I started giving to them. And at first, I thought everyone was so happy because I was like, of course, my aunt is going to tell me it's amazing. But then started spreading to more like not that close people. And everyone started telling me, it's so great that you're making fresh pasta because in Mexico, it's so hard to find fresh pasta.
For
like
sure.
no one's doing it. So I was like, this is something new. Like people are loving it. People actually appreciate what fresh pasta is. It's another dish from like dry pasta.
Yeah.
So people were telling me, oh, it's so great that you're doing it. And I started getting more and more pedidos.
Orders.
Orders.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's how like I started my tiny homemade business in pasta.
We're actually recording in the neighborhood that you grew up in Lomas, Lomas de Chapultepec. And you stumble into a space, just walking around, that now is your first brick and mortar store, first of 3, which we'll get into. How did you find the space and what inspired you to take the pasta business into a full service cafe and shop?
So I was walking around the neighborhood, and in that neighborhood, it's a very residential area. There's only like 2 or 3 blocks of commercial things. So it's very hard to find a commercial space that's not taken. So I was walking around the neighborhood, and sadly, because of pandemic, well, lots of businesses closed. So I was walking around, and I saw an open space, and I was like, wow. So first time in ages that I see a commercial space for rent in this neighborhood. And it was very close to Odette's bakery. It's like right around
down
the corner.
The block. Yeah.
So I called her and told her that like, would it be very crazy if I like decide to open a fresh pasta shop near your bakery? She was like, well, I don't know. Like, do you think it's a good idea? And I'm like, well, I've been thinking about it, and there's no places where you can buy fresh pasta in Mexico, so why not do it? I'm loving this.
You're tired of driving around the city.
And that was like the first time I thought, like, maybe I can actually make a business out of food. Like, it had never crossed my mind.
Yeah.
And a very important part is that if Odette had already opened her shop, so if I hadn't seen the process of her building a business from scratch, a food business especially, because my family, we have no one close that has ever had food businesses or restaurants or anything to do with food. So it wouldn't have been because Odette had already opened. I don't know if I would have done it like with that confidence. But she was like, look, I made it happen. You can do it too. Like she made me believe I could do it.
Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. I have some great news. The Future of Food Is You is going back on tour, and our first stop is in Miami. Team Cherry Bomb and I are hosting a live podcast event on Friday, March 8th at Valerie Chang Compa's newest restaurant, Maddie's. We'll have great talks and panels, snacks and drinks, plus networking. I'm excited to meet the folks who make up Miami's food scene and hope you can join us. March 8th also happens to be International Women's Day, and I can't think of a better way to celebrate than with the Miami Bomb Squad. If you'd like to give a solo talk at the event, you can apply through the link in our show notes. Thank you to our friends at Kerry Gold, Walmart, and Open Table for making this tour stop possible. Visit cherrybomb.com to get your ticket before they sell out. I'd love to see you there. Can you tell us about Nero and how you came up with the name, and also what can people expect when they come into the space?
It started out as just a pasta shop. So at first I opened, and it was only like you went in, chose your pasta, and recommended a sauce, or the client does their own like combination, a selection of free cheeses, gourmet products. And what helped a lot was selling Odette's fresh bread in Nero, which gave me a lot of clients at first. So that was a huge, like, big step to get to know me. And Nero comes from, like, the name comes from Nero di Sepia, which is the calamar ink.
Squid ink. Mm-hmm.
It's squid ink, which is what they use to, like, it's very common, the Nero tagliatelle, like the pasta that's black.
Yeah.
It's painted with squid ink. So I was like, I need to make it shorter. It can't be called Nero di Sepia. Has to be catchier.
Yeah.
And also Nero means black in Italian. And I've always loved the color black. Like, I always used to dress in black. So I was like, it's perfect. And fashion designers wear black. So I felt like I'm not leaving the fashion world behind.
Yes.
I love black.
That's your uniform.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's so fun. And obviously it sounds like Odette has been a really big support and help to you. It's funny because I feel like when she came on the show, she also talked about that time when she did the order for Mr. Chow. Mm-hmm. And you were also another person that helped her. So it's really awesome having that relationship. If you don't know who we're talking about Lorea's oldest sister, Odette Olavarri, who has a bakery here in Mexico City. And she was also a guest on the show. So other than your sister, what were other resources or people that you were relying on when you were trying to figure out how to build a space? You know, you've come from home kitchen to now having to buy like professional equipment to figure out what countertops to buy and things like that.
At first, the space, like, I went in and I was like, there's no way I'm fitting in a store here, because the space was so little and so, like, particularly distributed. So I called Naso, the architect that built Odette, which is now a very good friend. If it weren't for him, like, I don't think I would have been able to fit all the equipment in Nero. So yeah, the architect was a very important part because he structured it to make it work. And for the equipment, at first, of course, Odette was such a big help. Like, she gave me so many contacts. But being at a different business, a pasta business, I had to find different equipment. Mm-hmm. So the way I did it, since I had no one, like, from the industry, Google where to find a pasta machine in Mexico City. So I called everyone, like, all the contacts I saw. I went to see the machines. And then also I had a budget, so I couldn't go for the, like, super expensive equipment.
Whatever gets the job
done. So I had
done.
to make decisions, like, maybe the pasta machine, I'm going to spend this much, and maybe the refrigerators are not going to be, like, the brand I wanted. So I had to, like, make adjustments to fit to my budgets. And to build the team, that's a really great part of Mexico. I started asking around to people, like, do you know anyone that would be interested or has experience running kitchens, working in kitchens, that would be interested in working in a pasta shop? And so little by little, like, from mouth to mouth, the word got around and I made a team. At first, it was me and two others. So it was a disaster because I thought, like, of course, I'm going to be there all day. My chef and another cook. So us three were going to make it. No, so it was a disaster the first week. I remember at 3 a.m. cooking cacio e pepe for the first, like, 10 days and crying and saying, I don't want my life to be this. Cooking at 3 a.m., vodka sauce, no. I was so dramatic because I didn't sleep. So now I understand. It wasn't going to be like that. But little by little, I started building the team. And I was very lucky because since day one, I had lots of clients. So I could, like, grow the team very fast.
It's really nice going in there. It's very quaint. You know, you have the pasta bar, but then you also have, like, a full service menu with, you know.
It's good. Before, I opened it as a store. Mm-hmm. And never thought it was going to become a, like, fully operating restaurant, because it was a store and outside 3 tiny tables, because I said, in case a client wants a glass of wine and some olives or a piece of cheese, wasn't going to be a restaurant at all. And as the days went on, the clients were like, I can only order cheese, but, like, how come you sell pasta and I'm not having pasta on your table? And the idea started like getting into me of putting pastas on the menu. But I had always heard my dad say like, the restaurant industry is horrible because you're going to be your own slave and the times are so hard and they steal from you. And like in my mind, it was like the worst industry I could ever get into. So I was like saying, no, it's not going to be a restaurant. It's not going to be a restaurant. But then instead of 3 tables, I had 4 and I had a focaccia with ricotta on the menu. And then I had more entrees. And then one day I was like, I can't keep like deceiving my clients.
Yeah, go big or go home.
Yeah, I need to share my pastas, how I design them, because I'm always scared they're going to go home with my pasta and my sauce and maybe they're going to cook it the wrong way or they're going to like put water into the sauce to make it like softer. I don't know. So I was like, no, I need to give my clients the pasta the way I like it. And that's how the restaurant became what it is today, which is a fully operating restaurant. Now we have 10 tables.
Amazing.
And the menu, well, I couldn't make it that big because we have, like, if you go into the kitchen, it's so small. Since it wasn't planned to be a restaurant, I had to, like, make the space work to give food to 34 people at the same time.
Yeah.
So, like, I admire my kitchen team there because they make miracles happen.
Yeah. A year and a half into opening Nero, you get approached by your now business partner with this idea to open a second restaurant. Can you tell us how those conversations started and what that concept ended up becoming?
So Juanjo calls me one day and he's like, Lore, I need to tell you something. I'm like, what? I want to open a restaurant. And I'm like, okay, great, like amazing. How are you going to do it? Like you have no experience on it. He had never worked in the restaurant industry and he had studied hospitality but never did anything like that had to do with any of that. So one day he was like so mad that he had been like on finance and computers and she was like, this is over.
Quarter
I need
life
to open.
crisis.
Yeah, I need to open my restaurant. And so I was the only person that he knew who owned the restaurant. So he calls me and says, I'm going to open it. Can we see each other to ask you some questions? I was like, of course. So we went to get a coffee and he was like, I want to open a restaurant. I don't know if I want to do breakfast, lunch, dinner, have foie gras on the menu or chilaquiles for breakfast. And I was like, first of all, you need like to know.
Slow down.
Yeah, like you have to decide. You're going to open for breakfast, for lunch, or for dinner. Who are your clients going to be? Where is it going to be? He was like, I have the space. You need to come see it and tell me what you think about it. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go see it. So I went to see the space. It was smaller than Nero. I was like, there is no way. How do you fit a kitchen and clients in here? So I was like, good luck with your restaurant. We'll see each other with your chilaquiles and your foie gras on the menu. And so he calls me again a week after and he's like, I have some idea, but I want to ask you, where do you get a chef? How do you build a concept? How do you design the space? And so I gave him some advice. But by the 3rd time he called me, I was like, Juanjo, I can't be working for you. I love helping you, but I have to concentrate on my business, no? So I was like, of course I'm going to keep helping you, but I'm not going to design it for you. And so it was like we were synchronized. And next time he called me because I was about to propose it to him, but he called me first and he was like, Lore, I've been thinking about it. Do you want to be my partner on the restaurant? And so I was like, oh, wow, okay. See, because I had already been thinking about proposing to him the idea of being partners. And that's how like the deal was he was going to operate it and I was going to do the creative side. So I built the concept, the menu, built the space, because at first I was only going to be like designing the menu. And after that, I told him like, I'm sorry, but I'm so controlling. I'm not going to be able to just do the menu and not know what chair my menu is going to be like sitting in.
Yeah,
you
like
know?
a zebra print next to your
I was like,
dishes.
I need to know everything about the restaurant my
Yeah.
menu is going to be in. So I was like, if you let me, I design the concept, I design the menu, I design the space. So that's what happened. And 6 months after the first call, we opened Eatery.
Yeah, and what's Eatery for our guests who haven't had a chance to visit?
So Eatery is this very small, familiar little space in Polanco, which is an area of Mexico, where you go and you know the waiter is going to know you because it's like a very, very neighborhoody place. It's a very like bistro experience, elegant but not that elegant. And the food you have there is very bistro but with like my own touch to make it Eatery dishes. So how I designed that menu, I was thinking like a lot about my family palette, because it was like Spanish and French influences. We're going to make it a bistro, so it has to be more on the French side. So my idea was respecting like the classic dishes, like the French dishes, of course with a little twist on the presentation or on the recipe to make it more on my palate taste. So yeah, that's what you get at R. A very French menu, but with some touches to make it like my personality.
Yeah, and I will say it's so funny. Like I go there once a month. I love getting the steak frite that you have on the menu with the cubed potatoes, which is like a fun twist as opposed to the traditional.
The cubed ones.
Yeah, and then you also have the incredible potato bread with the creme fraiche and the caviar on top, which is just divine. So
that has become the star dish.
Yeah, that's your it dish. Yeah. I remember when we first started chatting, you told me about the story behind Ere and the name.
I love that story.
Yeah, why decide on a name like that?
When I was building the whole concept, I wanted the name to have something that united Juanjo and I. So I was thinking, like, what do we have in common? What do we have in common? And in the end, I thought about it and I was like, we actually both made a mistake. So erre, the verb errar in Spanish means make a mistake. So I was like, he studied hospitality but did nothing with it. And for me, it was like, I didn't study that and ended up being a restaurateur. So I was like, we both made the mistake. And I think it's something like very beautiful that from a mistake that erre came up. So it's like a little message of saying like from mistakes, great things come. And we all need to make mistakes to learn about them and make great things about them. And so when I decided, okay, let's do something with errar, the way you write erre, the bistro name is ER space RRE, which is not the correct way to spell erre. But it's made on purpose so that when people say it or write it, they also make a mistake. Because a lot of Americans or French people, they say R, or Americans go R. So they make a mistake when they say it.
Yeah.
So it's part of making mistakes.
Yeah. Feel good making a mistake and then come eat all the delicious food.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Come make some mistakes at R.
So you're not done with restaurant building. Again, most people are like, okay, 1 restaurant, I've got it. You're like, okay, 2, I'm feeling good. And then you get approached again a few months later, some change after, to open a 3rd restaurant concept, Margot, which is in Roma. It's your first rooftop restaurant. What inspired you to initially become a consultant in that restaurant and then eventually become a partner as well?
My actual partners at Margot, they went to R to have dinner. And they loved the place. They were like, the menu's so good. I love the bistro vibe, the service. The people are so nice. So they knew Juanjo. And they said, like, who designed the place, the menu? And he was like, oh, I'll put you in contact with her. Because I had mentioned one to Juanjo, like, maybe my dream is being like a restaurant consultant and then not operating it, you know?
Yeah, that way you're not crying.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the idea was like, if the opportunity comes up to be a consultant, I would love to try and like see if it's something I would like to do in the future. So I met them at the space, and they had the space for 2 years, and it was built to be a restaurant, but they never opened because none of them had ever had restaurants before, and none of them knew exactly what they wanted it to be. So they invite me over, I go to the space, and it was such a beautiful space. Like, it's all opened. It's like a rooftop with a lot of plants everywhere. And since in Mexico we have such a great weather, I was like, wow, this place, you need to start bringing people to see this.
And there are very few like rooftop restaurants, I feel like, for the most part.
Very few.
Like, mostly clubs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
See, that was a big challenge when designing the concept. Like, say rooftop and not imagine a club in Mexico is very hard.
Exactly.
Very, very hard.
Yeah.
So they invite me over, and so I go home and start thinking about it. And I was like, I don't know, because I have R and I have Nero. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. But then I was like, R is going amazing. We were very lucky too. Nero is also like on its feet, working. So I was like, for me, it was a great challenge. So I took it, and I was like, it's an opportunity to build again something from zero, but this time being in a very different concept. Like, it wasn't going to be an R. It wasn't going to be anything like Nero. So it was building something from zero again. So I said, yes, why not? Let's do it. And that's how I did what I did for R again. So I designed the concept, what it was going to be, the name, the menu. I designed the space also. And this one, it was like a different challenge because they had already built the space how they wanted it to be 2 years ago. So the challenge was also like not spending that much and trying to like working with what they had and changing as little as possible, but making the concept that I had work.
Yeah.
So that was a challenge, but I think we made it work very well. So when I was about to finish like the menu, and also I built the team, like the kitchen team and the manager, and I interviewed them and I like showed them how the service was going to be, how to run everything on the restaurant. And when I was about like to hand it over, like the keys, like here's your restaurant, thank you for letting me be the consultant, I couldn't sleep. I was like, I'm just going to leave my little other baby, like where I designed everything and just like go away, not ever know about it again. So I thought about it and I talked to my partner and said like, it's been amazing. I love the concept. I love everything about Margot. So I would love to still be part of it in the future, to still go and check that the concept is what I had designed and that the menu was still with the concept. Because I think it's very easy. If the person that knows what it is goes, like how can you develop new ideas if you don't have like the concept very
and you're not
solid?
Still in touch with it. Totally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they said like, we would love that. Of course, we had thought about it, but since you were so clear in the beginning that you were only going to be a consultant, we hadn't proposed it to you, but we would be so happy. And that's how it became part of Margot officially.
How did Margot's concept differ from both Ere and Nero?
Margot, you go, and the concept was like, it's like if you went to Margot's house. Who is Margot? Nobody knows. There's people that say like, yeah, it's like coming to my aunt's house. There's people that say Margot, it's like, she feels like my friend. Because we wanted to put a picture of Margot or like design a painting or something of her and put it somewhere in the restaurant. And I was like, no. Margot is whoever she wants to be for everyone.
I love that.
So it's like going to Margot's house. It's very different because it's a more daily space, like in morning, which was also a challenge because breakfast is a whole other business. So it's breakfast, lunch, and yeah, it's like more, I wouldn't want to like specify it as that, but so you get an idea, more girly-ish.
Feminine.
Exactly. More feminine because in the end, you're going to Margot's house.
Yes.
So it's like all these little details, like the little antique spoon, and you get like 100 cutlery and different plates, like if you were at your house.
I've been twice now. And I love just going kind of in the middle of the day if you're in Roma running some errands. And yeah, it's really fun because I feel like the menu is, you've got some like traditional French country fare things. Like you've got the little Cornish hen leg.
Exactly.
But then you also have some fun, quirky things that you would get at a friend's house, like the kerfuffle sandwich. The cruffle. I always trip on my words, but it's the croissant that you've like smushed in a waffle.
Exactly. It's a waffle croissant.
Yes. With like a nice bit of sweet cream on the side.
That's Margot's signature dish.
Yeah. And then you've also got the like ham and cheese waffle situation as well too.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it sounds like a fun combination. But I'm really curious, like when you think of all the 3 restaurants you've developed, what are some places you're getting inspiration from? Like, are there books that you're reading, movies, design?
See, I think where I get the inspiration, for Nero, for example, it was a lot, with my architect, I had a lot of like back and forth ideas and we want to make it like a Berlinish, more cold space, no?
Lots of concrete.
Exactly. So if you go in, it's like very squared, very clean, very open. Like, and for R and Margot, I think the inspiration, like the ideas I get, a lot of books. Since my Naso, we're actually roomies today.
So cool.
So he has so many architectural books. So I remember opening like a lot of books and finding inspiration there, but also a lot from places I have been and love. Since they're very European, no? In Mexico, it's hard to find those kind of places. So lots of books, magazines, and also a lot of my taste, I think, of what I would like when I go into a place. Exactly. Like where it would be, like where I would decide to have lunch if it existed.
Yeah.
And that's R. And that's Margot.
I love that because I feel like then in a way you do see your fashion degree come in handy, like especially like the way colors are contrasting.
Super similar.
The way that like textures, like especially in Margot, you have the benches that are almost like upholstered with like your cool aunts, like it could be your cool aunt or your fun grandma. And, you know, and in area it's very like sleek. It's like the place like, you know, your fun friend with like the sleek haircut would go or something.
And that I think is something that studying fashion gave me. Because in fashion, especially in my career, they wouldn't let you do anything without having an explanation behind it. So if you put the zipper, a plastic zipper or a metal zipper, why did you choose that? No? So everything had a reason. And that, I think, translated to the restaurants, the design, because it was like, why are the tables at R going to be wood and not be metal? No? So everything has a reason behind it.
I feel like asking what's a typical week wouldn't do justice, like how different and how much range you have. But obviously your restaurants are in 3 different neighborhoods in 3 pretty distinct parts of town. And Mexico City is not the easiest place to get through, especially during like rush hour. So I'm curious, how are you able to sort of maintain balance while also checking in on all your restaurants and feeling like you have a good sense of what's happening? Because to manage 1 is a lot, and to now even manage 3 with different personalities, different staff, different, you know, ways of organizing and doing things must be really tough.
Yeah, so first I had to make peace with traffic. That was the first in Mexico City, but I actually enjoy so much like my music, my podcast. So. And also I work a lot when I'm in the car. So after making peace with that, I love like my routine because every week is very different. So there can be a week where I go every day to one restaurant. I try to go at least twice a week to each one, no? But of course, Nero requires more of my time because I have no partners in Nero, so I do a lot more work. But I think I'm able to have 3 restaurants because I have built very good relationships with the managers in the restaurants. So it's like they're my right hand and I like trust them with everything that's going on. When I'm not there, I know they're there checking everything. So it's like if I was there. So there can be weeks that if we're doing specials for R, which we change every month, I go there 4 days, more hours. Or there can be weeks that I go to Margot more because we need to change something on the menu, or I just want to be there more and check like the staff and the service and the clientele. That's a very difficult part of not being able to go every day to the restaurant. The clients, they love seeing the owner there.
They want to know you.
It gives a lot of charm.
Yeah.
So in R and Margot, it's easier because I have partners. So they're the face of the restaurant. But in Nero, it's the one that's furthest away from where I live. So I try to be there as much as possible. But of course, like it comes a time when you can't handle all of that. Yeah.
It's really special that you've just been able to make peace with your reality, because I think you could also find yourself in this position where you're like, I'm just chasing my tail. I can never get it done.
No, and a lot of times it's like when I'm like mad, like you have so much work and you're going to go crazy. And then like I remind myself, did someone force you into doing 3 restaurants? And I'm like, no, you chose it. So now enjoy it and go work and smile and like remind yourself why you're doing this and how much you love it. And then, like, I have to remind myself of that and be like, yes, I love what I do.
The
like,
self-talk
stop getting
is real.
mad. Yes.
Yeah, I love that. I also really love how realistic you are about your restaurant experience. You know, you've never worked in a professional restaurant until you owned your restaurant. And it seems like you've been able to hire really impressive teams. How are you able to learn from the chefs and managers and staff that you're hiring when it comes to helping you understand your restaurant acumen, so to speak?
So for me, coming like into the industry with no experience at all from whatsoever, like not working there or knowing anyone that was in the industry, it has been very interesting. At first, in Nero, it was a lot of learning by making mistakes. So it took me twice the time to learn some things. But what has helped me the most is like the people that come work at my restaurants. I learned so much from them. It's like we make a good team because the not coming from a restaurant before gives me a whole different perspective on everything, like how you operate a restaurant and a lot on the culinary side, this like specifically. I know how my dish has to look and taste and smell. Like I know what it like the final product has to be. In my mind, it's there. But for me, getting to that result takes me a lot more time than someone with experience. So that's where my chefs help me a lot. I'm like, this has to be the result. I want to make this recipe. I want to make this dish. How would you get to that point? So they tell me, I would do it this way. And I'm like, I would do it that way. He's like, but you're crazy. How would you do that to a chicken? I'm like, have you tried it? No. I'm like, let's try it. Let's try it and see what works best. So the merge of those two perspectives is what has made me like see kitchen from a very different perspective than people that come from the industry.
I want to talk about the realities on running restaurants. You know, you don't go to restaurants to make money. You know, the profit margins are high, really expensive to run. There's a lot of stuff involved. How were you able to raise capital for your restaurants? And do you have advice for anyone that's, you know, thinking about trying to open a physical space or get creative in terms of the resources that they have? And I know that the infrastructure is also different in Mexico City, but yeah, I just would love to get perspective on that. Of
course. I was very, very lucky, because for Nero, I had family support, like I had a family loan, no? And that gave me, like, it's less pressure because, you know, you can pay it like little by little, no, with not that much interest as a bank. Mm-hmm. So I got very lucky. And for R and Margot, my partners were the investors. So also I got very lucky. Like I could do my baby from their inversion. Like they trusted me with their money, no? So I think I got very lucky. But if I were to open something and didn't have partners that were putting the money in, I think my advice would be, first of all, if you've never done something, start small. So your loan doesn't have to be that big. And first, you open small. And when it's a success, then you can go bigger. So you can ask people for loans and you show them, you're putting your money into this, which is a success. And I'm behind it and I love it. And like clients love it. So now they trust they're putting their money into something that works. And to start small before going to the bank, for example, because it's very hard finding loans. I tried, like my family was like, we're going to give you the loan, but first you're going to do the whole process like we weren't. Go to the bank, ask for how much money to make me appreciate the opportunity I was getting. Mm-hmm. So I went to the bank and what they were going to loan was very, very
Peanuts.
little. Yeah. So, but it made me be so grateful that I had the opportunity and realize like how lucky I was. But I would advise asking loans, even if it's small, to more people, to loved ones. Because when you have a loved one give you money, it's because you know they really believe in you. And that gives you like the impulse to work harder and to make it work faster. Because you want to give them their money back as soon as you can to show them like how grateful you are that they like believed in you.
There is power in starting small, and I think people always assume that, you know, there's overnight successes, but there's no such thing. Like, everyone works hard. You can't do it on your own. Takes a village. Yes.
Again, make mistakes.
R is the mantra.
And I think it's easier to make little mistakes at first and start small. If you see that your small business is not going great, it's easier to, like, make it work.
Yeah.
In comparison, if you open something very big, to make it work, it's harder.
One of the realities of running restaurants in Mexico City, too, is that there's a lot of, you know, allegations and reports when it comes to labor violations. And, you know, there's definitely a stratified class when it comes to staff being underpaid. And you've been really sort of adamant on making sure that your kitchens are safe and supportive environments. How has this impacted the culture in your kitchens? And how do you think your attitude towards these practices, like, inspires the rest of the industry in Mexico City?
Well, in Mexico and everywhere around the world, but in Mexico, I think it's a little worse. I don't know, maybe I say it like that because I live here. But the industry, it's very normalized. Bad practices are very normalized, like low wages, extra hours, not being paid, doubling shifts, not having like a personal life outside of work. Mm-hmm. For me, even if I love my job and I work very much, for me, it's very important to never let your personal life go. So I try to like give this to my employees and showing and appreciating their work by paying well. Because in Mexico, what happens a lot is that they steal the tips, which they count on, no?
It's you like mean owners steal tips?
Okay. It's part of the wage, no?
Yeah.
And they steal it for X or Y reason, but it's very normalized. And employees don't know that that's illegal, no? Since they don't know it, they can't come up to the boss and say, "Oye, you owe me my tips." It has happened to me a lot that people come work with me and they're like, "Why do you pay so much and so little hours?" And I'm like, no, wait. What I always ask myself is, would you be willing to make what your pasta maker does for that many hours for what you're paying? If the answer is yes, it's that it makes sense. If it would be no, it's like you either are paying very low or they're working too much. So I try to respect that as much and like show them that it's not wrong to be well paid. It's very funny. Like, it sounds funny when I say it, but it has happened to me so much that they underappreciate their work.
I'm really curious to hear how you found community in the industry in terms of people that, not necessarily like chefs or anything, but other people in food that have inspired you or, you know, made you feel good about what you're working on.
For me, that has been like a tough part since I never worked in a restaurant. The food community out there, for me, it has, the process of knowing people has been slower. And also because what we were talking about, like, I'm so hard on this, like on the fair practices, that I've been kind of neglecting going into the community because for me, it's very hard. Like, even if you meet the chef, no, at this restaurant, of course, I'm going to be happy to.
Yeah.
But I have to make sure the person I'm meeting is working towards a more fair practice working community. I don't know how to say
more sustainable.
Exactly. And I think like as a community of the food industry in Mexico, we have to push towards having like a similar practices in all kitchens, having a standardized practice that you can see in all kitchens, because having teams, most of the people that come work with me have worked in other places. And you can see someone that came from a place where they were happy, the practices were good, no? And you see people that come from places that you've heard that are amazing, but it was the worst experience of their life. So I think the community has to push towards being more fair and not having those differences behind kitchens. Because for me, what happens in the kitchen and in the operation is what translates to the client experience.
1,000%.
Like, you can taste it. Even though you see it from the outside, you're like, wow, the experience is not going to be good if the people working there are not happy.
I know you've talked a little bit about wanting to develop your culinary experience, you know, maybe perhaps staging somewhere or just getting more experience in other restaurants to hopefully inspire those that bring them back home to you. Obviously, you know, we're huge manifestors on the podcast. So are there any particular restaurants or places that you'd love to stage at some point? Obviously outside of Mexico City.
Sí.
Yeah, that you think would make you feel more confident in the kitchen?
See, I think like right now I'm happy with my experience and like my restaurants, very happy. But I think the next project cooking in my head, to make it happen, I need so much more experience on restaurant management, first of all. And I think I can only learn that from people that I have been doing it for way more years than I have. And on the culinary side, I need to gain more experience on bigger restaurants because my 3 restaurants are kind of small.
I think each are under 50 seats, something like that.
Sí,
yeah.
Under 40.
40, oh
like
wow.
The biggest is 40. Sí.
Okay.
So I would love to gain experience on a bigger restaurant and more like elegant kind of fine dining because that's like where my mind is going in my head.
That's where restaurant number 4 is coming.
I don't know, but yeah, that's like, I don't know why, but I know I want this and I know I want to learn from fine dining. So I would love to go like to the classics like Le Bernardin. I would love New York because I think New York is like the mecca of fine dining since so long ago. And I can't go that far because I still have businesses to run. So I think New York would be a good idea.
Yeah.
I also would love to go to 11 Madison Park. Also because I would love to learn. I know he's like very into vegetables.
Daniel Hum. Yes.
And I would love to like incline more on that because I think that's the future where we all have to go. So there at the Jean-Jacques, any fine dining, elegant, and the places I mentioned, I think also have a lot to do with R, like on a bigger scale, of course, and more fine dining. But it's the kind of menu I would like to learn from.
Is there a dream guest that you'd love to visit? R, Nero, or Margot? Like if they just walked in, you would be?
I would love, like I really, really admire Lalo Garcia.
Who's the chef at Maximo Bistro.
Exactly. And especially, of course, because his menu and like his skills as a chef. But also talking about fair practices, there's people that have worked at his restaurants that come to work with me, and they talk with a smile on their faces of their experience with him. So I would love to meet him and ask him how he handles human relationships with his employees.
Lorea, thank you so much for joining us on the show. If we want to continue to support you, where are the best places to find you?
On social media as Lorea Olavarri on Instagram, or Nero or R on Instagram. I still see the direct messages sometimes.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Before we go, our guest is going to leave a voicemail just talking to themselves 10 years from now. You have reached the Future of Food as You mailbox. Please leave your message after the beep.
Hola, Lorea, in 10 years. I hope by now you've opened the restaurant of your dreams. I hope it's in Mexico City. I hope you have a great team. I hope you know everyone on your team. I hope your clients come into your restaurant and feel the vibe of you being there and of all your team being happy. I hope you're closer or you have somewhere you can go to the garden and grab your vegetables and be closer to nature. I hope you're still very close to your family and to your sister and you still call each other 5 times a day. I hope you've achieved your dream of studying more, of becoming an expert on vegetable cooking. And I hope you're very happy and still in the food industry and making an impact on food in Mexico.
That's it for today's show. I would love for you to leave a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to the show. Thank you to Kerry and Oishi for supporting our show. The Future of Food as You is a production of the Cherry Bomb Podcast Network. Thanks to the team at City Box Studios, executive producers Carrie Diamond and Catherine Baker, associate producer Jenna Sadhu, and editorial assistant Londyn Crenshaw. Catch you on the Future Flip!